G'day, and welcome to Tartarian Truthers' very first Q&A with Casey and JoJo. Hi, Casey.
Hey Jojo, hey everyone. This is so
G'day, my friend.
exciting.
I know, how exciting. I'm so super stoked that, this is actually our 31st episode.
Yeah, that's crazy. 31 episodes in what, 11 months?
Yeah, about 11
12
months
months.
now.
Yeah. That's pretty insane.
Unbelievable. I just want to say that it has been quite a slog to get here, but here we are, and everybody's asked to see our ugly mugs.
Here they are.
Here they are. You're welcome.
Welcome.
But Casey, we got so many awesome questions. So you put out a call to our subscribers on YouTube and also to people that follow you on Instagram,
hmm
and we got such a great response. It was so good.
We did. We got lots and lots of questions, heaps of suggestions as well. So a lot of them weren't actually questions, they were more suggestions for future episodes and topics that people would like us to dig a little deeper into. So those things we've kind of put aside in a spreadsheet to refer back to for when we're, looking for content for future episodes. And today we're just going to be focusing on those ones that were actual questions. We had a lot of people kind of asking about things from other countries. That's not really our thing. So Australia is our jam. We're really into, Australian history and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're focusing on. So if you did ask a question about an overseas kind of location, we are not going to be covering that, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately, no. We
Um,
won't be addressing that today anyway, but that might pop up in a future episode. We don't know.
hmm, maybe if it relates to Australia.
Exactly, because like you said, Australia is our jam.
That's
So,
right. And it's got so
um,
much going on.
before we move on, we need to say a massive thank you to all the folks that have bought merch.
Yay, thank you, everyone. We're getting so many orders in each week. It's fantastic. This is the lovely Erin, and she bought quite a few items and has been totally rocking them. So thank you so much, Erin, for sending in those pics as well. You look
Thank you,
fabulous.
Erin. I love it. And I think you might be somewhere around where I am at, up on the Central Coast. So we might have to connect soon.
Yeah, that'll be
We might
cool.
run into each other.
Tartarian to the tribe.
That would be so cool. But yeah, thanks everybody for purchasing. I'm always repping. I know Casey's always repping our merch too. Yep, I knew it. I knew you must have had a Tartarian Truth t-shirt on there. But yeah, it's awesome. Go ahead if you haven't already done so. Go check it out. Like, it's some really cool stuff. So
Mhm.
we'll leave a link in the description below.
Yep,
Okay, are we ready to go?
we are. Let's do it.
Okay, so first up, we have a question from Esther, and I kind of wanted to maybe put together a couple questions that were similar. So,
Mhm.
Esther's question was on our life's journeys and events that made us start questioning history. Are we teachers, historians, or did we perhaps have a dream or a vision? And in addition to that, another question was, what was our turning point into all of this? And researching Tartarian, the truth. And then how did we come together, Casey? Like, how did we meet? Did our journey start together or did we start separate? So, first up, I'm not a teacher or a historian. And Casey, you?
No, I'm not a teacher or a historian. I have worked in early childhood education for my whole career up until the mandates. But yeah, definitely not a teacher or a historian.
No, nor am I. So,
We could call ourselves amateur historians, though,
there
Jojo.
we go. Amateur historians. You know what, Casey? I hated history. I'm
Mm,
just saying. I was probably, and I think it's because I knew something was up. Like, I just didn't
yeah,
enjoy it. Like, and it was like modern history, and yeah, I didn't enjoy history at all. And
I loved it.
did you?
I
Yeah,
used to want to be an archaeologist. How embarrassing. Yeah,
that's not
fake
embarrassing.
dinosaur bones.
Okay, maybe now that we know what we know, but you know what though, that's okay. I just know that I probably had bad teachers. That's what I think I had.
Mm,
Like,
yeah,
teachers that just were just just there to do their job, teaching the curriculum, and it was boring to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how did we meet? Because
so
we've only known each other a short time.
It's crazy, isn't it? I feel like I've known you forever. But yeah, so JoJo, I started an Instagram last May. I decided I was going to start sharing some of Australia's old world architecture, and JoJo was one of the first people to DM me and just introduce herself. And yeah, we just decided to meet up. There was a rally in Sydney a couple of weekends after that, and so we met up there. And this is where this photo is from, in Hyde Park in Sydney. And yeah, right there on that day, JoJo said, "Let's start, a podcast." And then we agreed on a YouTube. And as they say, the rest is history. We had no idea what we were doing.
Not at all.
No experience. We just knew that we both agreed that Australia had a weird and wacky history. We were like determined to prove that Tartaria, may have stretched as far south as Australia. And we just went with it, didn't we?
That's right. I tell you, Casey, that day was one of my most favorite days because I felt at home. I felt at home with you. I just knew there was something. We clicked instantly, and
straight away.
It was wonderful. And fast forward to today. So we have known each other for about a bit over 12 months now. And this was the last time we met.
Yeah.
At the beautiful tree. I forget.
The grandmother tree.
The grandmother tree. Of course, the grandmother tree. In Carry On. It's just, anyway, we've since been able to see each other, at least a couple times since our first meeting. But we do everything via Zoom. We're quite modest in everything. You live in a caravan. I work out of my bedroom. I mean, it's not very...
We have very basic equipment. My mic's from Aldi.
Look, I'm always having sound issues, Casey, with how many headphones have I bought, do you reckon?
I know, it's ridiculous.
I've lost count.
It's crazy. And our admittedly, we don't have the best, equipment. Like my laptop's about 4 years old and miniature. Like it's tiny.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how
to do the best that we can with what we've got.
I know. And you know what though? So far we've managed to smash out 30 episodes. This is episode 31, and it's all thanks to our viewers and people who have encouraged us to keep going, because I don't know, if we didn't launch the way we did, I think it'll be really hard. But we got such a great response from everybody, and that's why we're so encouraged to continue doing what we do.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, I mean, I think that went a bit of a tangent, but what was the journey to get to here, though? Like, what was your background, Casey?
So I guess for me, like I said, I was always really interested in history. I loved history. I remember as a kid being obsessed in convicts, and just, I guess now just looking back, I just probably thought it was so unbelievable, that people could live like that. But then, I was introduced to like this whole Tartarian theory and the alternative history theory. So hidden history, lost history, stolen history, which I hadn't, been exposed to before. So then that just like blew my mind, already being a history lover, to then, being open to all this other new information, new possibilities. And I just thought, hang on a second, when I look at Australia's history, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. The rest of the world is evolving and growing, and Australia's just here, this massive continent, just doing nothing. And that's why I started my Instagram, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and I'm not as seasoned as you, I would say. I'm quite new. I woke up in 2020, and that's when I started to notice that things didn't add up. And I've noticed a lot of people kind of had that same revelation, I guess, at that time. Things didn't feel
the pandemic kind of woke a lot of people up, didn't it?
It really did. I was one of them. So I am forever grateful for that. I know that much. But yeah, that's kind of where I started, and I'm so grateful we met.
Yeah, me too.
All right, next question.
All right, next question. Let me see. What is it? All right, it's your boy 2131 from YouTube. He's saying, love your content, girls. Question, have you guys lost many family and friends because you guys are awake? And if so, do you guys have any interesting stories about it? As well as Elvis P asking, are we both single? So we thought we'd pop those in together because, get them
Yep.
out of the
And
way.
neither of us are single. We are both
No, we're both
married.
married,
Yes.
both happily married. All right, so
Friends and
have you lost
family.
any friends and family?
Oh
Oh,
dear, haven't we both?
yes, we have. We
Hmm.
definitely have.
So for me, I think, Casey, though, when you think about the loss of friendships and family, I actually think it's changed my relationship with a lot of people as well. Not necessarily, I've lost people, definitely did lose people along this journey, but
mhm,
I've realized that perhaps the people that have stuck around, well, for me anyway, I've noticed, I think they're actually embarrassed because they don't want to let go of what
mhm,
they've been taught, like this cognitive dissonance that people
yeah,
experience. They refuse to think outside the box. And that's
mm,
what I've noticed. So I may have lost friends, but even the relationships that I do have changed because I think they think I've lost my mind.
yeah. That's so sad, isn't
Isn't it
it?
sad?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm a bit the same. I've lost a lot of friends that just, aren't on the same wavelength. I've got a couple still left, but we just don't talk about any of that kind of stuff. It's all very surface um conversations. And as for family, yeah, I'm pretty lucky that some of my family are on board, but it's not like we have family and friends that are huge Tartarian Truthers fans, do we?
No, no, we don't. Our brothers are fans.
Our
That's a good
brothers are
thing.
fans,
Our
yeah.
brothers are fans.
My
Thank you,
brother and one of
Jamie.
my brothers, yeah.
Thank you, Storm.
Thank you, Storm. Thank you, Jamie. um,
um,
but
yeah,
yeah,
we're
that
lucky in that sense. We actually have our media, like, our brothers who do support us, which is really great.
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, okay,
All
so
right. Yeah, that's about it.
that's that one. Next
Mhm.
question.
All right. Okay. Straight up. So let's get this one out of the way, Jojo. This is from Drew from Missing the Point podcast. So we had a great chat with him a few weeks ago. If you want to listen to that, you can check it out. I think he's on Spotify now, actually. Um, so yeah, go check that out. But Drew wants to know, where does Kazaria fit into all of this? Because that was something that we kind of delved a little bit briefly into during the interview, and JoJo was saying that she was just doing a bit of digging into it at the time.
That's right. So Drew, I do remember your question, and to be honest, I kind of stopped doing research on Khazaria when I realized that there really wasn't a connection to Tartaria, I guess. But
Mhm.
the Khazarians were essentially a nomadic Turkic origin. That's where they were from. And they basically ruled this particular region around 650 to 969 AD. So for over 300 years, they did rule this region that spanned sort of modern European Russia to, you'll see there, Ukraine, Crimea, and Kazakhstan. So they were basically a main artery for commerce between Eastern Europe and Asia at the time. Now, the only kind of interesting thing that I did find is that the Khazars, they were the only state in the Middle Ages that were Jews, where they practiced Judaism. So that was quite rare. And also, there was a mass conversion to Judaism in the 8th century. And today, there's rumors that speculate that there is a connection to today's Ashkenazi Jews. So perhaps, Khazaria was connected to today's Ashkenazi Jews. I don't know how true that statement is. I've just heard that um, through different articles and stuff on the internet. But
Yeah.
as far as their connection to Tartaria, look, I can't see a connection, and that's mostly because of its geographic location and also the timeline, right? Time frame. So Khazaria was said to be, around between 650 and 969 AD, and then Tartaria, from what we're told, has a history of potentially being around starting as early as 1300. Sorry,
Was
so. unless this is my only take, is if we do subtract that, 1,000-year reign, or the 1,000 years that was added to our calendar, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very well known kind of not a fact because we
Theory.
know that it's a fact, but yeah, it's a theory that 1,000 years has been added to our calendar. So that would kind of make sense if
Mm-hmm.
that's true.
That's right.
But another recommendation, if you do want to learn more about Khazarians and our true history, is go and check out the Europa documentary. So it's long. It's about 12 episodes an hour each. I think you can find it on BitChute, Rumble. Very interesting
Yeah.
and pretty hard to digest, but it's important. So yeah,
You
I
do
think
probably need to watch it a couple times, don't you reckon?
yeah,
Mm.
for sure. If you can stomach it, some of it's pretty hardcore, but yeah, I think it's a must if you're interested in history, true history.
Yeah, to delve deeper into everything. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next one is from Fiat Me 33, and they want to know our thoughts on Tazzy.
Wow. Okay. So Tassie has always fascinated me. It's an insane place. It's yeah, there's definitely something more going on in Tassie than, what we've been led to believe. And I
I
am
agree.
actually going there at the end of this year for the whole of summer. So a good 3 months exploring Tassie. So yeah, keep an eye out for some Tassie episodes for sure. But yeah, I don't know, Jojo. We were talking about this the other day. We have a bit of a theory that Tassie may have actually already been inhabited by peoples from perhaps beyond Antarctica. That sounds
Yeah,
kind of wild, but if you're
yeah,
in on the theory that Antarctica isn't just a massive, continent of ice, it is actually an ice wall, and there is stuff beyond that ice wall, then it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
yeah. Casey, this image here is super old, and isn't it so established already? I
Mm,
mean, I just think
I think it was
there's
in the
something deeper.
1870s. This one, I think it's Hobart in the 1870s.
Unbelievable,
Yeah.
and we've also mentioned in past episodes, look, Tassie was the second state to be settled after New
Mm,
South Wales, after Sydney, New South Wales. So when you think about that, like, this tiny island is so much further south,
and
than
it's so isolated.
so isolated.
Super
But
secret.
yeah, it's fascinating to look at this picture because, again, look at those roads, and it's everything's already laid out,
So
very, very well laid out.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's yeah, for it to be so far from, Sydney and so isolated, but the closest little island to Antarctica, it makes you think what was actually going on there, way back when. So we'll do a bit of digging.
Yeah, I actually can't wait for you to go to Tassie because hopefully I can come and meet you, and we can meet maybe here at Port Arthur. Check out Port Arthur.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be awesome. So
That
yeah, keep an eye out. More on Tassie, more to come
mhm,
for sure. For
definitely.
sure.
Alrighty, the next question is where is it? Okay, it comes from Words into Truth, Truth into Love on Instagram. Wonderful handle name, by the way. We love it. So they want to know, why can't I find a single photo of them laying 4,000 kilometres of cane track in northern Queensland? Why do we have so many cannons in all our parks that predate World War One and World War Two? And why did we need so many in the 19th century? So that's a really good question. I think when we refer back to our railways episode,
Hmm.
um, we talked a lot about, we actually think that perhaps a lot of these train tracks were already here. They were just being unearthed and repurposed. And that may be the reason why there isn't any photos of them actually being laid.
Yep.
They weren't laid in, the time frame that we've been told.
No, that gives you a whole new You know, I mean, yeah, you just got to look at our railway episode, because you'll see that we didn't have the manufacturing capabilities to even make materials mostly for these railways. So it just totally lends to the possibility that they were just being dug up,
Mm-hmm.
you know, post event.
Post cataclysm,
Yep. And
definitely.
then as for the cannons, look, we just talked about, you know, all of our fortifications all over Australia, and we have 2 episodes. The first one is star forts and golf courses, and then last week we released Star Forts Revisited, because we got such a great response from all of you. And again, we saw so many kind of gun emplacements and just random stuff that makes no sense for such an early time period, when we were said to have had 0 enemies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which just makes us think that, you know, a lot of these possible star fort locations were already there. They were already here, and they've just been found, repurposed, and reused, you know. But that doesn't answer the question as to why.
No.
The only other thing that we can think of as to why lends to that theory about what's beyond the ice wall.
Yes, that too. But you know, these are in North Queensland, right? So
Mm.
if
Well, no, I think what she's saying is, you know, everywhere. Just why do we
oh,
have
just in
so many
general, got it.
parks? Yeah, everywhere, all around Australia,
Yes, but that's
which we
right.
do.
That's right. Your comment is spot on though, because
Mm,
you know, why did we need so many
mm,
south? You know, so far south.
mm.
You know, that just totally yes. Oh my gosh, this is so many
So
questions.
many questions.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Next one, we got Sandra Morrison on Insta. She wants to know our thoughts on Iwaranon's backflip. I think I'm pronouncing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then next 2-part is, what is our theory on Australia and its history? 2 very good questions. And
Very
Casey,
good.
I'll hand it over to you on Iwaranon.
Okay, so obviously we were a little bit surprised when he, you know, pulled out that episode where he basically took back a lot of what he said. Um, but you know what? It didn't stop. It didn't affect us in any way. It didn't make us want to stop researching and exploring and sharing with you guys what we're finding about Australian history. So our focus really is on Australia and Australia's lost, stolen, hidden history. Um, you know, and whether or not that pertains to Tartaria or not, we're not 100% sure. You know,
No,
we just share our findings with you. And so what he has to say about that doesn't really affect us, you know?
no, no, it doesn't. I mean, we've, I think our last 30 episodes detail enough of what our stance is. You know,
Hmm.
we were a little bit, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit taken aback, and but again, didn't change our stance. Like, we still have so much more to explore, so
Hmm.
much more. You know, every week we're coming up with more ideas, or we're given different information, and we go with it, right? So that's all we can do. Whatever we're presented with new information, we kind of haven't we have the right to change opinions too. So
Yeah,
I
that's right.
think that's kind of where we're at. But
Mm.
the second part of that, look, Australia has a much richer history than what we've been told. That's for certain.
Yeah.
And Casey, you found that amazing book, remember, from our, what episode was that?
Demolishing Old World Australia.
Demolishing Old World Australia, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one excerpt from that book pretty
Hmm.
much stirred us so much more. And I think I think you should read it.
Okay, so this is from Jacques Arago's book, Voyage Around the World. So this was the voyage was in 1819, and this book was published in 1822. So this section, or this little paragraph, just really brought it home to us that what we believe about Australia's history is, you know, definitely not true. There's so much more to it. The coast that borders the spacious harbour of Port Jackson is a curious spectacle. A novel and vigorous vegetation is there, intermixed with small houses, the European architecture of which strikes our eyes and excites our admiration. We see only the advanced posts of a city, and are struck with astonishment we are scarcely arrived and ask how many ages this colony has existed.
Unbelievable.
It's crazy, huh?
And I think they're referring to the horse stables, right? When they first came encountered what they thought was the possible residence of the governor, but it turned out to be horse stables.
Yeah.
I might
Yeah.
put a picture of that over this so we can see what they were referring to when they first arrived. But yeah, that totally right there.
Yeah. So our stance basically on Australia's history is that what we've been told is maybe a very, very small fraction of it. There's so much more that was going on before 1770 when Captain Cook arrived for the first time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we've got those 18 years of who knows what was going on.
Yeah, between 1770 and 1788, what on earth happened?
Will we ever know? But we are going to try and figure it out, aren't we? Okay, so the next question is from John Patton, and he asks, do you believe giant trees may have once graced our plain, and could Ayers Rock be one? Good question.
Do you want to go first, JoJo?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've never actually thought that Ayers Rock could possibly be a tree. But I certainly believe that there were giant trees that grace this beautiful plain of ours, for sure. But what's your take on Ayers Rock, Casey?
Yeah, no, I've never thought of it as a giant tree per se. You hear lots of different theories of what it could be. I personally think that it's something melted, whether it be a huge old structure, completely annihilated during a cataclysm of some sort. I don't think it's a tree. There are plenty of other places.
Theories, but there's lots of theories about what it is, though. Some people have told us that it could possibly be a petrified heart of a titan. I mean, there's so many other theories about Ayers Rock, but it's definitely special.
Yeah, it's definitely special. It's something special. But yeah, I think there's definitely places in Australia that do look like they used to be, giant trees, the remnants of giant trees, like this island in Tasmania, for example. I mean, that is spectacular.
It is, and it doesn't it look like just a giant
that's
tree?
just being chopped down with a giant axe.
It's so flat, like it's just okay. Next question, Casey. Did you want to ask this one, or do you want me to go ahead?
Sure. Oh no, do you want to ask it, and then we'll be in order again?
Yeah. Okay, so next question. RK Showen wants to know if we've seen the map shown on Autodidactic's channel, the episode called They Are Hiding More Land. And he said it's very interesting. In case you've already actually alluded to this, right? So Van Mouth's Noises, and I think that person is on Instagram, wrote your thoughts.
No, I think Ven's Mouth Noises is a YouTuber.
Oh, okay. So Ven's Mouth Noises, a YouTuber, wants to know our thoughts on stationary Earth and the possibilities of more lands beyond the ice wall, potentially where the Tartarians came from or returned to. Now, I have not seen that episode by Autodidactic that you speak of, but you've like I said, Casey, you've already alluded to the fact that it's possible that there are more lands beyond the ice wall, correct? And you know what? I couldn't help but think of that interview from that naval officer, the US naval officer, Casey, I forget his name. Is it
Admiral Byrd?
Admiral Byrd, that's him. So I couldn't help but think of his interview, and maybe we can include it in here too. But, what are your thoughts? You've already kind of said, but I've never thought of Tartaria being down there. Never.
Yeah, no, I haven't either. But yeah, I just think that there's definitely something beyond that ice wall. I don't know what it is. It could be Tartarian, the Tartarian people could have come from there, gone to there. I don't know. It's a mystery.
That's right.
But yeah, it's interesting that Admiral Byrd, came back from this expedition with all of this information and, then mysteriously died a year later.
Very, very weird.
Very interesting. And then it's kind of, except for in our kind of circles, that information's been forgotten and lost. No one really talks about it anymore. So plus we've got
with the Antarctic Treaty, they've got all those nations that signed off that they were not to explore further. I mean, we can't just go there on an expedition, or we can't. There's no way.
Get close to it.
No,
not allowed. Yeah.
But we would love to go down there, wouldn't we,
Casey? Yeah, let's go. I'll get in a caravan.
That would be fun.
It would. All right.
We wish.
Yeah,
anyway.
Definitely. All righty. So the next question is from Lee Lu Chichi. And she says, did you check out whitebirding? So I think what this question is alluding to is a conversation that I did have with someone on Instagram in a message, but it was a while back, and I do talk to a lot of people. So what I think she's talking about here is, so we have a history in Australia of blackbirding. So we had some ships that used to go over into the South Pacific Ocean in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and basically kidnap the islanders. So men, women, children. Sometimes they would trick them aboard these ships. Other times they would just flat out kidnap them, bring them back to Australia and force them to work in the huge sugar plantations up in northern Queensland. So that was called blackbirding. So I'm assuming that Lilu is talking about whitebirding in the fact that, we've got a long history of Black people being used in slavery. It's something that we've all been taught about, but it's often not very widely discussed that white people also too were used
That's right.
in slavery. So, JoJo and I just recently discovered during some research on WA that Swan River, which was what Perth was originally called, actually had indentured children to work in labour, or so they say it was for labour, back in 1832. So
very early times. They were
very early.
Transporting young people as indentured labour, which is horrible. And they weren't Black people, they were white children.
Right. And there's a lot of information around about the Irish slave ships as well. And we've got, obviously the convict story.
Convicts, that's right.
Yeah. And we also found, and we're doing a bit of research, so we are actually going to be bringing out an episode on the child immigration to Australia. So that started in 1832 and it went right up until the 1960s. And we did actually find some information that said that they also sent children to Van Diemen's Land, so what we now call Tasmania, right back as far as 1832 as well.
Wow.
So,
and you're waiting on this book, aren't you, Casey?
I am. That Eager for Labour I should get it probably Monday. So we'll get
more information and be able to pull together a good episode on that.
Definitely.
That's right. I mean, that's it. This is what happens when we start researching. It just takes us down new rabbit holes. And I think we always wanted to talk about, more orphanages and our female factories and insane asylums and jails in more detail, but we never really thought, much of this whole transportation of, I'm going to say, slaves, to Australia in those early days when, so the history was completely wiped, these young people, and we can say
they
that
don't know where they come from. They don't know the history, their families, No,
we can pretty much say that for everybody that did come to Australia in those early days, right? They hold something though, but we'll get there. We will get there. So next question. Love your work, ladies. And this is from Alexandra Stavro. Love your work, ladies. I'd be interested to know more about the Tartarians and if they were all wiped out due to the Great Event. How long were they based in Australia, etc.? I know these are tricky questions as there is no history of them. I'll also be heading home to Sydney for Christmas and New Year and would love to meet up with other Tartarian truthers in the Sydney area. Thanks, Alex. Okay, so Tartaria, Casey.
Mm. All right. So, there's lots of theories that pertain to Tartaria. You know, it's very widely known now. There's so much information out there, although it's all classed as conspiracy, of course. But it basically pertains to the fact that there was a worldwide empire that all lived in peace and harmony. They used free energy.
They built those beautiful structures
that
potentially.
That's right. That harnessed, the ether to provide free energy for all. And, it sounds amazing. It sounds absolutely incredible. And, it could have stretched down as far south as Australia. We really don't know. But we do have a lot of questionable structures and oddities and anomalies in Australia's history that just can't be explained. So whether it's explained by, Tartaria or something else, we really don't know.
No.
But it's something. And that's why we keep digging. We keep digging.
Right. That's right. And look, and maybe we don't know if they were wiped out in this most recent event, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've heard of resets in the past, and that seems to be going around a lot in our community right now, talking about resets. And I guess, Casey, that's something we can talk about maybe in the future, look a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah.
But again, we don't know. And there was one CIA document leaked that talked about the Tartarians being wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
And, that we can look more into that. Maybe we can try and figure out the ties.
From history. Yeah, the history pretty much being changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's the thing. A lot of people kind of expect us to know the answers to all these questions. We don't know. We don't know the questions. We've got the questions too. That's why we started this channel in the first place. It's because there was just so many things that didn't make sense, that didn't add up, that made us question a lot of things. So, yeah, I wish that we could answer all the questions and we knew everything. But unfortunately, I don't think anyone actually knows. Okay.
Next question.
Alrighty, next question. So this interesting comment now from Call40. He says, open ocean between Australia and New Guinea is currently 88 miles. In my decades of life, seeing thousands of maps, book prints, images, Hollywood movies and cartoons, there was at least 300 miles of open ocean north of Australia, making it down under. This is also an explanation for wildlife specific to Australia, its distance from other land masses. South America is now further south than Australia. Check it. Australia is further north than it used to be. Do you agree?
Well, now look at that. This is from Google Maps, right? It looks as though you could almost walk straight over to Papua New Guinea. I
know.
I mean,
I'd never thought of this before. It never even crossed my mind. But now that Call40 has brought it up, it's fascinating me because I can't quite get my head around it.
Neither can I. I never ever knew we were that close. And, Casey, it's weird because we know that our maps have been changing, but I mean, this is very, very recent times. This is within our lifetime that we can see maps changing right before our eyes.
Yeah. And it's bizarre because I can't quite grasp it because you look at old maps, some really old maps, and Papua New Guinea and Australia are connected. So
that's right. I've seen a map like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you would think that Australia is actually moving further south, but it appears that it's now
moving up.
So did it used to be down? Did it used to be attached to Antarctica? And it's got, you know what I mean? It's just, I'm baffled by this.
So am I. I think this is an interesting one. We should look a little bit more into it, I reckon. This is a cool one. Thank you, Call40. That was super interesting. Okay, so Dennis McManus, sorry. Sorry, Dennis. Why do they put dates on the top of old world houses in Melbourne? And I think I know. So, Dennis, you think you know. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, tell us, mate. Come on.
Now, we did talk about this 1,000 years possibly been added to our calendar, right? But Casey, you've always said, look, the reason why they put them on there is because of this, to make sure this narrative that we've been told holds true, right? Because now this building, it's got it on there. It says it was built in 1891, right? In 1890 up there.
Yeah, right? So you can't question it. It's there in black and white.
There, no questions. That's why. But look at that first one, the one that says established, right? Look at number 1 and it's spacing. Like this is what we all look at. I know people that also are interested in this whole possibility of 1,000 years added to our calendar. They look at the 1. Okay? And look at that one. It's super close to the 8. It's spatially inaccurate.
Yes. So have these just been added after the fact? Who knows?
Could that building actually be from 800?
That's the thing though, we don't do this anymore. When we build a building now, we don't put the year that it was built above the door, or up on the top of the building. It's just a bizarre thing. And, there could be a reason for it that we're just not aware of. So if you do know, Dennis McManus, please comment below.
Thank you. Tell us your thoughts if we're on the same path. I think we might be. I reckon we are.
I hope so. All right. Okay. Hang on. I've lost the next question. Oh, there it is. Okay. Ty Dubbins wants to know, are present day graveyards and cemeteries built upon older ones to hide the deceased from previous generations from the public throughout all of Australia? Interesting question.
100% yes, though, right?
Who knows what they're hiding under there? Once it's a graveyard, especially modern day, it's not going to be dug up. So you could put anything under there.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And I can only refer to Rookwood Cemetery when I did visit, and I noticed a lot of brick buried underground. And, I just couldn't help but think, could this be a fence line? Could this be the tops of a structure, a pre-existing structure? And, you look at all of the dates on the gravestones, and nothing predates 17. Well, actually, they're all 18 mid-1800s, I think, onwards. Nothing much.
We don't have anything older than that.
No.
Which is weird. If we were here from 1788.
Yeah, where were all the people that were died from 1788 to like 1850? Yeah, and even then they had a train that used to go into Rookwood Cemetery, which puzzled me too. Like, how many people were they moving? Like, what?
Yeah. For it to require its own train and its own train station.
Exactly. Really strange. Coming in from Sydney, into Western Sydney. Anyway, yeah, but I do think, it is entirely possible that they used existing cemeteries to hide the previous civilizations. Definitely. Definitely, Ty. Sure. Okay. Dirge Media. Have you constructed a timeline that we are able to view? I know that you mentioned the years that things were constructed in the videos. I was thinking a good exercise would be to construct something that could be shared with the community. I'm happy to go back on your videos to begin. Oh, Dirge, awesome. Had we known we were going to go this far, we probably would have started putting together some sort of timeline. But we didn't know it was going to be like this, did we, Casey?
We were going to make 31 videos in a year, so...
No. So I love the idea. I'm massive on timelines, so I would love to partner with you, Dirge. I would love to. Seriously, this would be a really good exercise. And maybe put everything into better perspective, instead of all of our speculating. We have more of a visual. So 100% I'm in.
Yeah, do it. Comment below, Dirge. Get in touch.
Yep.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that. So these questions that we've got are kind of similar. So we've lumped them together. So they're all kind of about our First Nations people. So Radak Cerny would love to understand the Indigenous folks' knowledge of history, especially with the whole Tartarian question. And he also wants to know, was Tazzy special? Because the original Tasmanian Aboriginals were wiped out 100%. Why? Did they know too much? How widespread is the Tartarian history? Is there much in Perth, Darwin, or is it just the East Coast? If you understand the reset is coming, then anything really is possible. And then Joanne Cargill also wanted to know, is there any Aboriginal folklore knowledge about existing civilizations remaining? And then, then we had another person, hi, well, gee, so it's 3 people asking about our First Nations people. Interested to know if any Indigenous Aussies have information about relatively recent 200 years ago upheavals like a reset, old civilization collapsing. If so, how did their ancestors survive? I understand some of this stuff may be secret. All right, so that's quite a lot of detailed and loaded questions, Jojo.
Oh, yeah, loaded questions, because obviously I know, Casey, you get asked this question all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Me, not so much on Instagram, but of course we've posed the question as well hundreds of times, and we want to try and make sense of it ourselves. The only thing, well, that I can take away from this is, they wiped everyone out for a reason, because they have the memory of the past. That is the reason why
Mm-hmm.
they would have killed the whole population of Tasmania, of Aboriginal Tasmanians. And the
Yeah.
heartbreaking thing is, it doesn't take very long for a whole generation of people to be fed a new history narrative. And we've said that in the past, even we talk about these children coming over indentured labor in 1832. These kids don't have a history either. They don't know where they came from. And how easy is it to completely wipe out someone's um, history,
Culture, history,
culture,
everything.
history, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we feel that, that that's kind of what's happened, especially to Tassie. I mean, like I think the last Tasmanian Aboriginal person passed away in the 1870s, maybe. This photo was taken in 1866. So these were the last full-blooded Tasmanian Aboriginals. So, how horrific that they were basically hunted, and destroyed. Even more so when we think about the fact that, once again, what we were talking about before, Tasmania being so close to Antarctica, what was really going on in Australia, prior to 1770 when Captain Cook arrived.
Yeah, look, you know what? We don't know, and we don't claim to know. And that's one thing that we can definitively say is, like, this is where we are. We are we are where we are, and we can only
Yeah.
do more research to try and figure it out.
And unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of our First Nations people reach out. We've tried. We've had a couple of people. I know that there's one guy that I've chatted to on Instagram, and he's in WA, and he's told me a couple of things that his grandpa has said that's made him question stuff. One of those things being that his granddad said to him, "White man's always been here." So that was something that really kind of got us thinking.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, and I remember him also mentioning that there was a sacred place that only certain people, and it was only for men in his tribe, could go to. And it was like a, a special tradition just for the boys when they come of age. And he said, in hindsight, it looks to me like a melted pyramid. So
Wow.
I think, it's just that a lot of our First Nations people have been told the same history that we've been told, that up until this time, they were just nomadic hunter gatherers. And then, white people came and took over and blah, 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 blah. I, I honestly don't believe that. I think that perhaps in some parts of Australia, Western Australia, Northern Territory, we did have, our tribes of Indigenous people that were hunter gatherers and nomadic. But we can't say that every single group of, First Nations people all over Australia all lived in exactly the same way. I feel like they were living, some of them, were living a much more advanced lifestyle than what we've been led to believe. And that was what was destroyed and hidden from them when, the British arrived. And like we said earlier, we don't know what happened between 1770 and 1788. What was really going on. And prior to that, going back to talking about cataclysms, how do we know what was happening in Australia before, this cataclysmic event that occurred that makes, at least 3/4 of Australia look like it's been carpet bombed?
Yep.
There could have been an advanced civilization here, and our First Nations people are the survivors. They're surviving the best they can after their whole civilization has collapsed.
Yep.
We just don't know. We've just been fed a story, and we've all believed it. But us, we like to question things, don't we, JoJo?
Of course we do. That's it. I mean, we can look at some of those images that we just went through, and they look like old structures, some of them.
Yeah.
And who was moving all of these rocks? They look like they were part of some sort of explosion, and they've just sort of scattered and landed. Like, I know we have archaeologists and geologists who like to tell us, oh, this is all natural formation and la 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 la. But from what we've done in our research, that all over the world there's evidence of ruins, right? And we don't call them ruins here. We call them, actually, some parts are called lost cities.
Yeah, that one. If you scroll back a bit, JoJo, I think.
Let's go back to that one. Is it this one?
This one. Yeah. So they actually call this the Lost City.
Right.
That's in Arnhem Land. Yep.
Makes you think, right? It's like, well,
it does, and it's a sacred Aboriginal site as well.
That's right.
So it's almost just like, over the generations, some of that knowledge and history has been lost. They know it's sacred, they know it's a lost city. It's just why and what happened.
What happened is the question, and it could be a series of events. It's not just one; it could be multiple, and we will never know because we've just been told one thing about Australia, that it was just sitting here in the middle of nowhere,
and
while
the rest of the world evolved around,
just existing while the rest of the world was evolving. And here's an example of an Indigenous Australian map.
Yeah, so all this represents all the different tribes and language groups within Australia. And so we've been told to believe that all of these people that lived on this huge continent all lived in exactly the same way. Hunting, gathering, nomadic.
Right.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
It is hard to believe. It is.
Especially when you look at, our Budgebim episode where, we looked at the rock walls, thousands of kilometers of rock walls, and the remnants of the stone dwellings that they were built.
That's right. And that's found all over Australia, Casey. So Budgebim is a really good example. And you went there firsthand and recorded kilometers and kilometers of these brick walls that, you actually can find them all over Australia. And of course, some of them are probably hidden from us, so we'll never be able to see them.
Yeah. But the Budgebim proves, that our First Nations people, they had that's huge aquaculture there. So they used to catch and farm the eels. So they had huge aquaculture, they had commerce, and they obviously weren't nomadic because they were building stone structures. It just proves that there was a lot more going on in Australia that's been hidden from us. And I think it's sad because we know what's been done to our Indigenous Australians. They've been absolutely annihilated. Their culture has been destroyed. They've been given a new history, a new story. We just don't know if there was even more to it.
Exactly.
Or the British came, especially on the East Coast, because so much of those Aboriginal tribes from the early days were completely wiped out. Majority of the tribes around Sydney were completely wiped out.
Yeah. I mean, look, this has been a tough topic. And Casey, I think what we will probably have to do in the future is a separate episode that does focus on this. And I think we've got enough information, and we would love to have Indigenous Australians or anyone reach out to us who has information or would like to partner with us, or even get onto one of our timeless truth-seeking episodes where we talk live and, you know, openly about
Have a
whatever
discussion about it.
Yeah, let's just talk about it. You know, there's no harm in this. We are all in the same position in believing that Australian history is a lie.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay, so on that note, a bit of a serious note, I think we should wrap it up because Casey, this, with all the questions we had, we realized that we probably need to split this up into 2 episodes.
Yeah.
But we're so grateful for everyone's contribution and totally loved all the questions. Till next week.
Yes.
That's
We'll
it.
do the rest. Yeah.
G'day. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for sticking around.
See you, everybody.